The hacking of websites or companies is becoming an all too familiar story. South African ports were brought to their knees recently when Transnet was hacked and its systems held ransom. The Western Cape Blood Service is the latest target. A spokesperson says they had to revert to a manual system, but that it routinely backs up its work. They say information security contractors are working to get to the bottom of this. Let's talk to Tech Central's Duncan McLeod about how this could happen. Duncan, the Western Cape Blood Service says it was not ransomware. We don't officially know why the criminals targeted something like a blood service. If it's not ransomware, what could it have been, and why would they target the blood service?
Well, yes, it seems like a strange target to go after, indeed. But the information I had was that it was in fact a ransomware service. So if they have issued a statement subsequently to that, then they've changed their tune on it. They initially said that they were the victim of a ransomware attack. But yes, ransomware is a growing problem worldwide. Pulled some statistics. Some research from a company called SonicWall shows there have been more ransomware attacks on companies in the first half of this year than there were in the whole of 2020. So it shows a massive escalation in these sort of attacks. And most of the attacks seem to be coming from Russia and Eastern Europe. And it's become a political issue too. We know that Joe Biden, the US president, and Vladimir Putin, his counterpart in Russia, had a bilateral meeting a few weeks ago at which ransomware was the main topic of discussion. We know that the Americans suffered an attack on the Colonial Pipeline system in the US, which is a fuel transport pipeline, which was knocked offline for a period of time. So these attacks are very serious, and as we saw in the case of Transnet, can have real-world economic consequences.
What kind of organizations are most vulnerable to this kind of criminality? I mean, if they can attack the blood service, it seems like no one is safe.
Indeed. Well, the numbers are absolutely shocking. The numbers, again, from SonicWall say that the number of attacks have jumped from, wait for it, 115 million in the first quarter of 2020 to 189 million attacks in the second quarter. I beg your pardon, that's quarter one to quarter two, 2021, 115 million to 188 million. So this is a very real problem, and it's surging. And I think most of these ransomware attacks don't make it into the media because they're hitting small and medium enterprises, smaller companies that perhaps don't have the cybersecurity resources that large enterprises have to fight these attackers. And unfortunately, I think in some cases, companies feel they have no choice but to pay up to have their to get the decryption keys so they can get access to their systems again, because they don't have adequate backups in many cases. The problem is, once they've paid the ransomware, which is often paid in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, there's no guarantee you're going to get those decryption keys. I think the figure I read was only in about 40% of cases do the cyber attackers actually give you the decryption keys once you've paid them the ransom in cryptocurrency. So it's a huge problem, and I think small and medium enterprises are particularly vulnerable just simply because they don't have the resources to focus their efforts on cybersecurity.
I suppose, Duncan, the moral of the story here is not to think to yourself, well, it won't happen to me, because you don't think you have data that they might be interested in. They could attack you no matter how big or small you are.
Yes, absolutely. I think the message is you've got to keep your systems updated. So if you're a small enterprise, what you need to do is make sure, if you're running Microsoft Windows, for example, or running a Mac, you need to make sure that software is updated. If the operating system says to you there's an update available, don't ignore it. Many people say, oh, this is annoying, I'll do it some other time. If there's a software update available for your applications, for your operating system, you need to install it immediately. And I think in large enterprises, they need to look at this from a governance perspective. Many companies still don't have chief information security officers, or if they do, they're middle management level. And I think the best governance, certainly in large enterprises now, the best approach rather now, is to appoint a chief information security officer that reports either directly into the CEO or into the chief financial officer, so at a very senior level, and possibly sits on the board. And you're certainly seeing this in banks, in organizations that are very vulnerable and need to protect customer information and have to take cybersecurity extremely seriously, like the banks. They all have chief information security officers in place, and we're starting to see that happening across other industries as well. And I think it's very important that cybersecurity is taken very seriously at board level, because of the reputational and economic damage that can happen if you are attacked, if you're the victim of a ransomware attack.
Oh, Duncan, how do the little old Tafumas of the world protect themselves? And also, how do I know that the businesses I'm interacting with are protecting my information?
Yeah. Well, I guess you don't really know what they're doing from a cybersecurity perspective, but I think you can assume that large organizations that are well governed, have good governance structures in place, do have cybersecurity plans in place. But if you're an ordinary man in the street, I think the message is, again, just keep your devices updated. If you're running an Android or an iOS device, make sure that if there's an update available, make sure you update it. I think that sort of patch management, make sure any device you have is as up to date as the manufacturer allows it to be, is the best way you can protect yourself. And then, of course, practice safe computing online. Don't click on dodgy emails. Don't click on dodgy links online, for example, because that's a surefire way to get malware onto your computer or onto your device.
Duncan McLeod, thank you so much for your time. He's from TechCrunch, talking about the recent cybersecurity breach at the Western Cape Blood Service. And as Duncan was speaking, I saw my colleague eNCA Lawson run to her phone to press that update button, because Duncan said, make sure you update.
I always forget my password and then I don't do the update. But nobody better be coming to us for any ransoms, because we don't have any money, people. So
you'll get
don't
about
target us.
zero is what you'll get. Yeah.
Chap says lots